You've probably asked yourself this question before. What really happens when your heart beats its last? Not the version you've been fed in religious doctrine or horror films, not the vague promises or threats, but the truth. The raw, direct, extraordinary truth about where your soul actually goes. Because once you know that, your entire life changes. And here's the part no one tells you. Death isn't the end. It's not even a pause. It's more like stepping out of a heavy coat you've worn your whole life and realizing you were never the coat to begin with. You are always the light inside it, the one observing, the one choosing, the one experiencing. The moment your physical body ceases to function, you're not thrust into some cold, alien realm. You're received. You're met with warmth, familiarity, and a strange feeling of, oh, I'm home. Imagine walking into a room filled with the softest light you've ever seen, not the kind that blinds, but the kind that embraces. In that first moment, time no longer means what it used to. It's not ticking, it's expanding. There's no fear, only awareness, and it's crystal clear. You become aware that you're not alone. There's a presence, sometimes many, not in the form of people with wings, but in waves of recognition. You feel them more than you see them. A loved one who passed years ago, a guide who's been with you since the beginning, maybe even a pet who taught you unconditional love. They don't speak in words, but you understand everything. It's all telepathic, pure, direct, and overflowing with truth. In that space, you look back, but not with regret. You see your life like a movie, not just the events, but the feelings, the choices, the consequences. Every time you loved, every time you hurt someone, every moment you wished you could take back, not to judge you, but to understand the weight of your actions. This is the soul review, and it's not punishment. It's education. But what's most surprising is how calm it all feels. You've carried the weight of your worries for years, bills, rejection, fear of not being enough, and in one breath, beyond this world, those weights fall away. Because none of that was ever you. You were never your job title. You were never the number in your bank account. You were never the illness or the mistake or the mask you had to wear to be accepted. You were, and still are, pure consciousness. And when you're in that expanded state, something clicks. You remember, not with your brain, but with your soul. You remember that this isn't your first time, that you've been here before, that Earth wasn't a test, it was a classroom. And you were a traveler, a soul that chose to come down here knowing it would be hard, knowing you'd forget everything, knowing you'd get hurt, lost, confused. But you did it anyway, because you wanted to grow, you wanted to evolve, and now you've returned. This is the part that shakes everything you thought you knew. You're not being judged by a giant figure in the sky. You're not being ranked or labeled. You're simply being met with truth. And the truth is loving. It's patient. It's wise. And it sees you not for what you did, but for who you are beneath it all. You feel a guidance that has always been with you, gently showing you the patterns, the choices, the pain you carried, and why. But this place, it's not clouds and harps. It's vivid, realer than anything you've ever known, colors more radiant than your eyes could ever perceive on Earth, structures made of light, energy, and thought, learning centers, gardens, temples, places to rest and places to remember. Not because you need a mansion or a throne, but because your soul responds to symbolism, and this realm reflects your consciousness. You're given time, if time can even be called that, to reflect, to heal, to explore. But there's something else, something deeper. You're asked a question, not in words, but in vibration, a frequency that says, do you want to go back? Or maybe, do you want to try again? And in that moment you remember your agreements, the soul contracts you made long before you took your first breath, the lessons you chose, the people you promised to meet, the pain you accepted so you could learn compassion. And if you're not done yet, if there's more you want to experience, more you want to give. You begin planning the next journey. Some choose to return. Some remain in that higher plane to guide others. Some move even further, into dimensions the human mind can't yet comprehend. But you have free will, always. That never changes. And here's the most incredible part. This place, this dimension of the soul, it's not separate from you right now. You don't have to wait until you die to begin remembering. Every time you quiet your mind, every time you feel the tug of intuition, every time you dream or have déjà vu or sense someone watching over you, those are glimpses of this realm, of your origin, of your essence. The veil isn't thick. It's thin, paper thin, and with practice, intention, and grounded awareness you can begin to perceive it. The sensations are subtle at first, a chill across your skin when no wind is present, a whisper in your ear that you didn't imagine, a dream that feels more like a visitation. These aren't fantasies, they're signals. The more you pay attention, the more they come. Because spiritual energy, just like physical energy, follows focus. You were never meant to be blind down here. You were never meant to suffer in silence, thinking this world was all there is. You were meant to learn, to remember, and to reconnect, not just with other people, but with the greater reality that surrounds you always. You've probably heard of people who claim to see beyond the veil, who say they've spoken to spirits, touched the edge of the next world, and returned with messages not just for one person, but for all of us. And while some are dismissed as charlatans or dreamers, every once in a while one comes along who stirs something deep in the collective memory, someone who makes you pause, tilt your head, and say, "What if she's right?" She was one of those rare souls, not because she needed fame, not because she asked for it, but because what she carried inside of her couldn't be silenced. From an early age she spoke of voices, visions, presences no one else could see. For most children these experiences fade. For her, they intensified. She knew things she wasn't supposed to know, details about people's lives, about their loved ones who had passed, about places she'd never been, and no matter how much skepticism she faced, she never stopped sharing what she heard. Over time, her gift, if that's what you want to call it, drew attention. First in quiet circles, then in bookshops, then across television screens seen by millions, and suddenly what was once considered taboo was now being broadcast in living rooms. She didn't wear robes. She didn't speak in riddles. She was blunt, grounded, and oddly comforting. She didn't speak of death as a punishment, but as a continuation. She spoke of the afterlife not in metaphors but in details, specifics, landscapes, the process of arrival, the orientation, the way souls traveled. And it wasn't just spiritual seekers who listened. It was skeptics, doctors, scientists, mothers who had lost children, husbands grieving their wives, people who, in their private despair, clung to any glimpse of what might lie beyond. And when they heard her speak, something inside of them softened. Maybe it was the clarity in her tone. Maybe it was how she spoke, not like a mystic, but like someone who had simply been there and returned, like someone reporting back from the other side of the curtain. But not everyone was convinced. Some laughed, some ridiculed. She was mocked on late-night television, dismissed in newspapers, labeled as dangerous by institutions that feared her message. Because if what she said was true, that death isn't real, that we choose our lives, that the other side is more real than this one, then it would unravel everything society had built. It would unseat the fear-based narratives that keep people obedient, and so naturally those in power pushed back. Yet the stories kept coming. People who had been in readings with her reported facts she couldn't possibly have known, descriptions of their deceased loved ones, exact words they used to say, personal items only family could recall. There were skeptics who entered her presence with arms crossed, only to leave in tears, their hearts cracked open by truths too precise to ignore. And perhaps most controversially, she talked openly about what happens after we die. She spoke about the moment of separation from the body, the presence of loved ones waiting, the existence of a spiritual world that operates on vibration, where souls reside in communities, study their past lives, and choose when or whether to return to Earth again. She said there were cities of light, libraries of knowledge, healing temples where damaged souls could rest, and that no one, no matter how dark their path, was ever truly abandoned. For some it sounded like fantasy, but for others it resonated so deeply that they felt as though they'd heard it before in some forgotten dream, because truth has a vibration, and when it hits you, you don't analyze it, you feel it. She described death not as a punishment, but as a homecoming, and that simple reframe for thousands of people turned grief into peace, fear into faith. Even if they couldn't prove it, even if the world called them naive, deep down something in them whispered, yes, this is how it really is. And what made her different wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. There was no cryptic language, no hidden codes. She spoke plainly, directly, almost matter of fact, like someone describing a place they'd visited many times. And that's what made people lean in, not because they wanted to believe, but because something in her voice reminded them of what they already knew. Of course, not every prediction she made came true, and those moments were seized upon by critics like vultures. They used them to discredit the entirety of her work, ignoring the countless other moments that touched people's lives in profound, unshakable ways. But that's always how it goes with those who challenge the dominant story. They're not allowed to be human, not allowed to be wrong. They must either be perfect or condemned. But here's what they couldn't suppress: her message. Because once something has been spoken into the collective, it can't be erased. Once a soul hears truth, it doesn't forget. And maybe that's why her descriptions of the afterlife still echo today, not because she was trying to prove anything, but because she was trying to remind you of what your soul already suspects, that you are eternal, that death is only a doorway, that beyond this world of pain and noise and confusion is a realm more real than anything you've touched in this life, and that it's waiting, not in judgment, but in love. So whether you believe every word she said or still wrestle with doubt, one thing is certain: once you've heard it, something shifts. You start to see death not as the final punctuation, but as a comma, a pause before the next sentence, a breath before the next chapter. And maybe that's the real reason so many wanted her silenced. Because she didn't just talk about the afterlife, she made people less afraid to live. When your final breath leaves your body, it doesn't feel like an ending, not in the way you've been taught to imagine. There's no sudden void, no abyss, no terrifying descent into nothingness. Instead, something astonishing happens. You open your eyes, not your physical eyes, but your soul's perception, your awareness. And in that instant, quicker than a heartbeat, you realize something profound. You're still you. You can still think, you can still feel. In fact, your senses feel sharper than ever, clearer, lighter. And there's an overwhelming sense of peace. It's as if you've stepped out of a tight space, a body that once housed you, and into something infinitely more spacious. And here's what surprises most souls in that moment: the absence of fear. Even those who dreaded death their entire lives often feel a wave of gentle calm rushing over them, because what they discover isn't darkness, it's light. Not just light you can see, but light you can feel. A tunnel, yes, but not like a hallway or a cavern. It's more like a current, a gentle river made of glowing intelligence. It pulls you, but it doesn't force. It welcomes. This is what so many near-death experiences describe. A brightness that isn't harsh but familiar. A vibration that calls you not with words, but with memory. You remember this light. You've seen it before. Maybe in a dream. Maybe in a moment of deep meditation. Maybe in the silent awe of nature. But here, it's full and undeniable, and it feels like home. As you move through it, you're not alone. That's another surprise. You're met, not always in a dramatic way. Sometimes it's a soft knowing, a presence beside you. Other times it's unmistakable. Beings of light, loved ones, guides who have watched over you your entire life. They don't speak with mouths, but you hear them, you feel them. They emanate joy, relief, celebration. It's not your funeral, it's your return. And here's something else most don't expect. You still feel like yourself, but without the heaviness, without the fear, the guilt, the constant second-guessing. It's as if everything you thought was wrong with you never actually belonged to you at all. And as you continue through this energy, something gently tugs from behind, like a thread being released. It's been called the silver cord. Not just a metaphor. Many who've had out-of-body experiences speak of it. A shimmering connection between your soul and your physical body. As long as that cord remains, your soul can return, but once it severs, the transition becomes complete. When it does, there's no shock, just freedom. Imagine standing outside on a crisp morning and taking the deepest breath you've ever taken. That's what it feels like when the cord dissolves. You're free, truly free. And that's when something extraordinary happens. Time disappears. Not just as a concept, but as an experience. You're no longer bound to clocks or calendars. There's only presence, only awareness. And within that awareness, entire lifetimes can be remembered in a flash. You might suddenly know things you'd long forgotten, faces, names, events from lifetimes ago. Not like remembering a story, but reliving it. And pain? Gone. Physical pain, emotional pain, the weight you carried, the illness, the trauma, the sorrow. It doesn't follow you, it dissolves the moment your soul steps out. Not because it never happened, but because your soul doesn't identify with it anymore. Like waking from a nightmare and realizing it has no hold on you. You look back, not with judgment, but with deep compassion. You see yourself not as a failure or a success, but as a brave soul who dared to live, who dared to forget, to fall, to search. And, in that moment, you understand. None of it was wasted. Every heartbreak, every mistake, every quiet act of kindness. It all mattered. It all taught you something. And as you float in that luminous awareness, you realize something else. You're not confined by location. You can move through spaces with thought, see your loved ones, watch over them, visit the places you loved, even help guide those who are still learning. You're not limited to one body. Your energy, pure, conscious, loving energy. And yet, you're still uniquely you that surprises many. They assume we dissolve into some vague cosmic soup. But that's not the case. Your essence remains. Your humor, your curiosity, your preferences, but purified, freed from fear, elevated. You are more yourself than you've ever been. And here's where the stories from around the world converge. People from every culture, language, and background. Those who have clinically died and returned, they all describe variations of this same experience. A tunnel, a light, a feeling of overwhelming love, a reunion, a life review, and the gentle question, are you ready to stay, or do you want to go back? It doesn't matter what religion you followed, what name you gave to God. This experience doesn't play favorites, it welcomes all. It recognizes consciousness, not creed. And it honors intention, love, growth. Because in the end, it's not about what you believed, it's about how deeply you lived, how much you learned, how often you chose love over fear. And even when you didn't, that too became part of the learning. Death is not a punishment, it's not even a doorway, it's a soft return, like the tide gently pulling you back to shore, and when you arrive, you're not scolded or tested, you're embraced, guided, and reminded you were never alone. And maybe, just maybe, that's what we all need to hear. Because so many walk through life carrying the terror of death like a shadow, worrying about judgment, about eternal suffering, about vanishing into darkness. But that's not the truth. That's programming, passed down through systems designed to control. The real truth is this: death is not darkness, it's light. A light you came from, a light you'll return to, and a light that's been inside you all along. You've felt it, haven't you? In those moments of deep stillness, in dreams that felt more real than waking life, in the presence of someone who's passed, when you suddenly sensed them near. That wasn't imagination. That was a glimpse through the veil, the same veil you'll one day pass through fully, not to disappear, but to remember who you really are. Not a body, not a role, but a soul. And when that moment comes, it won't feel like the end. It will feel like waking up. You won't be alone when you arrive. That's the first thing you'll notice. Even before you fully understand where you are, there's this undeniable sensation. You're being welcomed. Not with words, not even with gestures, but with presence, with energy, with a recognition so deep it brings tears to your soul, not from sadness, but from a kind of sacred remembering. You'll feel it before you see it. Someone familiar. Not just one, but many. Beings who have been waiting. Some of them you knew in this lifetime. A parent, a sibling, a child, a friend. And others, souls you haven't seen for what feels like centuries. Souls you've shared lifetimes with before. Some will be human, some, maybe not. But each one carries the same message. We're here. You made it. You were never lost. And yes, even pets come running. That companion who waited for you by the door, who loved you without condition, who passed far too soon, they remember. They never stopped watching. And now they're with you again, bounding through the fields of the eternal, not in spirit, but in vibrant, full presence. What happens next isn't chaotic. It's gentle, intentional, like being guided through a sacred homecoming. You're taken, sometimes by your primary guide, sometimes by a group, into a space of orientation, a place where your soul is rebalanced, recalibrated, not because you're broken, but because Earth is heavy, and before you move deeper into the afterlife, you're given space to rest. This orientation process isn't a classroom. It's more like a sanctuary of light, a place designed to cleanse you of residual pain, confusion, and trauma. You're not asked to justify yourself. You're simply held in healing frequencies that help your soul release the density it picked up in the human experience. Energetic knots dissolve. Old wounds, especially those unprocessed during your life, are brought to light and soothed. Some describe it as a hospital for the soul, but it's more beautiful than that. Imagine a room that adjusts itself to your energy. Sounds, colors, temperatures, even the architecture. It all mirrors your vibration. And as your soul relaxes, those frequencies rise, like tuning an instrument that's been out of key for decades. Once your energy stabilizes, you begin to feel a pull, an invitation to go deeper. That's when you're introduced, or perhaps reintroduced, to one of the most profound spaces in existence. A place known by many names across cultures, but most often referred to as the Hall of Records, or the Akashic Library. You don't find it, it finds you. This isn't a building made of stone or glass. It's more like a living archive. A structure of light and intelligence that seems to stretch in all directions, upward, inward, outward. Every soul who has ever existed has a record here. Every thought, choice, emotion, and moment stored not in judgment, but in truth. And here's where it gets intimate. You don't just read these records. You feel them. You experience them again, not from your own perspective, but from the perspectives of those you impacted. If you caused someone pain, you feel that pain. If you gave someone love, you feel that joy. Not as punishment, but as learning. This is the Soul Review, and it's one of the most humbling, empowering moments you will ever experience. Not because someone is evaluating you, but because you're finally able to see the ripple effects of every choice you made, the ones you forgot, the ones you regretted, the ones that saved someone's life without you even knowing. In this space, there's no shame, no pride, just understanding. You begin to see your life not as a series of failures or successes, but as a masterpiece in motion, a living tapestry of growth, contrast, and courage. And just when you think it can't get more overwhelming, you're taken to reunite with your soul group. These are the souls who travel with you across lifetimes, your deepest spiritual companions. Some of them played roles in this life. Others are strangers to this incarnation, but eternal partners in your evolution. You'll recognize them instantly. The energy, the humor, the tone, it's all familiar. Being with them is like breathing after holding your breath for 80 years. And the conversations that follow aren't ordinary. They're not about politics or achievements. They're about lessons, about what you learned, what you taught, what you want to experience next. They'll tease you, laugh with you, embrace you, and sometimes challenge you, because they know the real you, the eternal you, and they're invested in your growth just as much as you are. The environment you're in during all of this isn't random. It's not one size fits all. On the other side, everything is vibrationally matched. The landscape you find yourself in reflects your inner state. If you carry peace, you find yourself in peaceful surroundings. If you're still processing pain, you may begin in more neutral environments until that energy is released. For some, it looks like endless gardens and natural sanctuaries. For others, shimmering cities of crystalline light. Architecture that defies human logic but makes perfect soul sense. Some find themselves in quiet libraries, others in open-air temples. And it's not static. As your frequency shifts, so does your environment. Because on the other side, everything is responsive to you. Even thought itself becomes a creative force. Want to sit beside a waterfall of golden energy? Think it. Want to fly through fields of stars? You can. But beneath all the possibilities, there's still a rhythm, a flow. Souls don't linger in fantasy. They're drawn to growth, to connection, to understanding their place in the greater whole. And perhaps that's the greatest gift of this arrival. You're not just here to rest. You're here to remember, to re-choose, to decide what's next. Because this isn't the end of the journey, not even close. It's just the beginning of something far more real than anything you've ever called reality. The afterlife isn't chaos. It's not a blur of clouds or an endless undefined space. It's beautifully, intelligently structured, like a living design that adapts to the evolution of every soul who enters it. You'll notice quickly that everything here feels intentional. Where you go, who you meet, what you experience, nothing is random. That's because the spiritual realm is built on vibration, on frequency, and the moment your soul arrives, it resonates with the level of consciousness it's reached, not as a reward or a punishment, but as a natural attraction, like a tuning fork vibrating in harmony with everything around it. There are layers to this place, not walls or borders, but levels of awareness, dimensions that reflect how far a soul has expanded. Some traditions speak of 7 levels, not because it's a fixed number, but because these 7 serve as a map of spiritual evolution. The first level is closest to Earth. Souls here are often still adjusting, still processing what they've just experienced. Some aren't even fully aware they've passed. They might linger near familiar places or loved ones, but over time, through guidance, they're gently lifted to clearer states of consciousness. The second and third levels are where most newly transitioned souls begin to orient. These spaces are calm, nourishing, deeply healing. Think of them like rest stops for the soul, places to recalibrate, to review, to remember. As you ascend to the 4th and 5th levels, the awareness expands. These are the creative realms, spaces where souls begin to actively engage in learning, teaching, and forming their next intentions. Here, the cities begin to appear. Not cities as you know them, but communities made of sound, light, energy, structures that respond to thought, temples where wisdom flows like music, libraries that don't just store knowledge, you experience it. The architecture in these places doesn't follow Earth's laws. A building can float, curve, shimmer with colors you've never seen. Doors appear where they're needed. Pathways light up as you walk. Every space is alive, because it reflects consciousness, and consciousness here is limitless. The sixth level is more rare. Fewer souls dwell here, not because it's exclusive, but because it requires a deeper surrender of identity. These souls often become guides, teachers. They may no longer need to incarnate, choosing instead to serve those who still walk the path of human experience. And then there's the seventh, the realm of unity, of pure merging with Source. Most souls don't reach this level immediately. Some never seek to. It's not a goal, it's a choice. Here, individuality dissolves into divine presence. The I becomes we, and the we becomes one. But no matter where you are in this vast and layered realm, one truth remains. You still have choice. That surprises many. They assume that once you cross over, everything is decided. But the opposite is true. Your free will doesn't end with death. It expands. You're shown possibilities, offered paths, and always given the power to choose. You might choose to stay in the spirit realm, to study, to heal, to reconnect with your soul group. Some souls spend what would seem like lifetimes here, not because they're stuck, but because they're preparing. They're crafting new intentions, designing their next incarnation, or choosing to guide others from behind the veil. Others feel the pull to return, not out of punishment but purpose. They recognize something unfinished, a lesson unlearned, a gift not yet given, and so they reincarnate, not as a reset, but as a continuation, as the next chapter of their soul's journey. Before that choice is made, something profound happens. You're invited to meet the council. This isn't a court. There are no gavels, no judges. The council is a gathering of ancient wise beings, souls who have evolved through countless dimensions. They don't command. They don't intimidate. They hold presence, deep, loving presence, and they help you remember. Here, your soul contracts are reviewed, the blueprints you designed before your last life, the intentions you set, the relationships you agreed to, the challenges you volunteered for. Everything is laid before you, not as a test, but as a mirror. You see what worked, what grew, what hurt, what healed, and with their guidance you're asked, do you want to amend your path? Do you want to rewrite the contract? And you can. You can shift agreements, release old vows, choose new soul partners, even delay reincarnation entirely if you wish. There's no pressure, only alignment. Some souls decide they're ready to return. They choose parents, geography, personality traits, even challenges, based on the evolution they seek. The harder the life, the more accelerated the growth. But they choose it, and they do it with love. Others say, not yet. They stay to guide, to serve, to expand their wisdom in ways Earth can't provide. They become protectors, messengers, even the inner voice you sometimes hear when you're still enough to listen. And then there are those who reach a point of completion, not perfection but peace. They've tasted the full spectrum of experience, and now they move into realms that language can't describe, where energy becomes pure essence, and the soul, if it chooses, merges back into Source, like a drop returning to the ocean. But even there, choice remains, because in the spiritual realm nothing is forced. Everything unfolds in divine rhythm, in alignment with the soul's desire for growth, for love, for unity. And as you walk through this invisible architecture, as you explore the radiant layers of this vast home, beyond time, one realization becomes crystal clear. You were never just human. You were never just this lifetime. You were and are eternal consciousness, learning, expanding, becoming, and the structure that holds all of this, it's not just above you, it's within you. A reflection of your soul's potential, patiently waiting for you to remember what it already knows. You've been told that after death there are only two destinations, heaven or hell, reward or punishment, an eternal paradise for the righteous, an eternal inferno for the damned. But what if that isn't true? What if what you've been taught was never about truth but about control? For centuries, the idea of heaven and hell has been used to govern behavior, to keep people compliant, to motivate them with reward and terrify them with punishment. But that's not how the soul works. That's not how the universe operates. There is no eternal fire waiting to swallow you whole for your mistakes. There is no angry figure sitting on a throne casting people into darkness. The truth is, both more merciful and more empowering than that. Hell isn't a place, it's a vibration, it's a state of consciousness, a field of dense energy shaped by fear, guilt, hatred, and a belief in separation. And yes, when some souls pass from the physical world, they carry those energies with them, not because they're condemned, but because they haven't let go, they haven't healed, they haven't yet remembered who they really are. In that state, they find themselves in what some call the lower realms, places of confusion, stagnation, and isolation. Not because they were sent there, but because they created it. Thoughts become things in the afterlife, and if your thoughts are still clouded by pain, by shame, by the illusion that you're unworthy, you land in a reality that mirrors that vibration. But even here, even in what some might mistake for hell, there is no finality, no trapdoor that locks behind you. Because these states are temporary, and every soul, no matter how lost, has the power to rise. You see, the universe doesn't abandon its children, not the murderer, not the addict, not the one who wandered too far. Every soul carries within it a spark, and no matter how dim it gets, that light never goes out. And sometimes all it takes is a single shift, a moment of surrender, a whisper of willingness, and the help arrives. Because there are beings, loving, radiant, patient, who move through these dense realms not to punish but to guide. They are the spiritual rescuers, souls and guides who descend into lower frequencies to help others rise. They carry no judgment, only compassion. They speak not in fire but in light. Even souls who committed great harm are not cast aside. They are shown the impact of their actions. They feel it, not to be tormented, but to understand, because understanding leads to healing, and healing leads to liberation. And sometimes the most tormented souls become the greatest teachers, because once they rise, once they remember who they are, their compassion becomes unstoppable. They return to help others who are where they once were. They become lights in the dark, proof that no soul is beyond redemption. And what about heaven? That golden paradise, sung about in hymns and carved into stained glass? It's not a gated city in the sky. It's not a throne room or a banquet table in the clouds. Heaven is a frequency, a state of being. It's what happens when your soul is aligned with love, with unity, with truth. It's a realm of joy, creativity, expansion, and peace, not because you earned it, but because you remembered it. You don't get into heaven, you return to it, because you came from it. And while many experience this upon crossing over, the truth is, you don't have to wait until death to touch heaven. You can access that vibration here, now, in this life. Every time you choose love over fear, every time you forgive, every time you act with kindness when you could have acted with resentment, you're lifting your vibration. You're moving closer to the frequency of what many call heaven. And the same is true in reverse. Every time you deny your own light, every time you act from bitterness, hatred, or shame, you drift from that natural state, not as punishment, but as consequence. Because vibration attracts vibration. But here's the mercy of it all. You're never stuck. No matter how far you fall, you can rise again. And that's why the concept of eternal damnation is so damaging. It tells you that some mistakes can't be undone, that some people are unworthy of light, that redemption has a deadline. But the soul knows better. The soul knows that darkness is only the absence of light, and that light can be chosen at any moment. Even on the other side, especially there. Some spirits linger between realms, caught in confusion, trauma, or unfinished business. They become what we sometimes call ghosts. Not evil, not cursed, just unresolved. But even they have paths upward, through prayer, through healing, through being seen and remembered by the living, and eventually they too rise. Because there's a current in the universe that always pulls you home. You can resist it for a while, but eventually you let go, you surrender, and you rise. So no, there is no hell, not in the way you were taught to believe. Only vibration, only experience, only the sacred, patient journey of a soul learning how to come back to love, and in that truth there is no fear, only freedom. The spirit world is never silent, but most people have forgotten how to listen, not because they're broken, not because they're blocked, but because the noise of the physical world is loud and the whispers of spirit are soft. They don't shout, they don't force. They wait patiently, just beyond the veil for the moment you become still enough to notice. You don't need to be special. You don't need to be chosen. You don't need years of training or ancient lineage. You just need willingness and presence, because the ability to communicate with spirit is already inside you. It begins with the subtle senses, the ones you were born with but probably never named. There's clairvoyance, clear seeing, that inner flash of an image, a symbol, a face you didn't consciously imagine. It's not like watching a movie. It's more like receiving a mental snapshot out of nowhere, a momentary vision that feels layered with meaning. Then there's clairaudience, clear hearing, not with your physical ears but with your inner awareness. It might sound like a voice in your mind, but it speaks in a different tone, a sudden word, a sentence that comes fully formed, a name that appears in your thoughts without context but with certainty. And there's clairsentience, clear feeling, the most common and often the most overlooked. That sensation in your chest when you walk into a room and feel tension without anyone saying a word. The chills that move through your body when someone speaks truth. The heaviness or lightness that tells you something is either aligned or not. Some feel the presence of spirit like a change in air pressure. Others feel a tingle along the spine, a brush across the arm, a gentle pressure on the shoulder. These aren't fantasies. They're contact points, invitations to pay attention. But how do you know it's real, that it's not just imagination or projection? That's where discernment comes in. True spirit communication is never rooted in fear. It doesn't demand, it doesn't rush, it doesn't confuse. The real messages come with clarity, with calm, and often with repetition. They arrive gently but persistently. They won't compete with your thoughts, but they'll keep returning until you notice. There was a story once about a woman who kept seeing pennies in the oddest places, her refrigerator, her bathtub, even on the seat of her car. Not just occasionally, but daily. She thought she was going crazy, until a medium told her something simple. Her grandfather used to toss pennies at her when she was a child, laughing as they hit the floor. It was his playful way of saying, "I'm still here." That's how it often works, through patterns, repetitions, physical validation layered with emotional truth. Spirit will work with what you'll notice. A song on repeat, a phrase someone keeps saying, a scent from nowhere, a dream that lingers long after you've woken. So, how do you open that channel? How do you begin to tune your awareness to the frequencies that are already around you? It starts with stillness. Set aside time, not when you're busy or multitasking, but when you're willing to be still. Close your eyes, place your hands over your heart, breathe deeply, and simply say, either out loud or in your mind, "I'm listening." Don't try to force a vision. Don't chase a voice, just be. Start to notice. What thoughts arise? What physical sensations appear? Do certain memories surface? Does your body lean slightly forward or backward? This is the beginning of intuitive dialogue. Once you've created that quiet space, you can begin to practice more directly. One of the simplest methods is intentional journaling. Write a question at the top of the page, something like, "What does my spirit team want me to know today?" Then write whatever comes, even if it feels random or unrelated. Don't edit, don't analyze, just let the words pour through. Often you'll find wisdom woven into those pages, phrases you wouldn't have used, insights that shift your perspective, and over time the voice becomes clearer. Another essential practice is clearing. Just like you clean your home, your energy field needs cleansing. Light a candle, burn sage, Palo Santo, or simply use sound. A bell, a chime, your own voice humming. Set the intention to remove any heavy energy that doesn't belong. Picture your aura being rinsed in golden light, clearing away interference. This step is especially important before attempting spirit contact. You wouldn't invite guests into a cluttered home. The same is true energetically. The clearer your field, the easier it is for high vibration beings to connect with you. And always ground yourself. Because while it's tempting to float up into the spiritual realm, real communication happens when your energy is anchored. Stand barefoot on the earth. Hold a grounding crystal like hematite or smoky quartz. Eat something dense like fruit or bread. Bring your awareness to the soles of your feet. Remember, your power is in the balance between the realms, not in escaping this one. Over time you may begin to notice a unique presence, what some call a spirit guide. Not always visual, sometimes it's just a sense of being watched over, advised, nudged in a certain direction. You'll begin to recognize their signature, like an energetic fingerprint. You might feel their presence always on your right side, or hear their voice just before sleep, or receive messages through repeating symbols they send. The key is consistency. The more you listen, the more they speak. The more you trust, the more they show. There was a woman once who swore she had no intuitive gift, but every morning as she made her tea, she began asking aloud, "Is there anything I need to know today?" At first, nothing happened, but after a few weeks she started to hear answers in her head. Not booming declarations, just soft suggestions. Call your sister. Take the longer route today. Be still. She followed them, and every time something meaningful unfolded. A reconnection, a missed accident, a needed rest. That's the quiet magic of spirit communication. Doesn't have to be dramatic. In fact, the most profound connections often feel like subtle knowing, like remembering something you didn't know you forgot. And while some are born more sensitive, the truth is we're all wired for this. Every child senses the other side. Every dreamer visits it. Every empath feels its pull. You haven't lost the ability, you've just been taught to ignore it. But the moment you decide to remember, to practice, to believe, to listen, it begins to return. You'll begin to feel spirit brushing the edges of your day. You'll start noticing that someone somewhere is guiding you, not controlling, not commanding, but lovingly suggesting a better path. And when that connection deepens, when you've built that trust, the relationship becomes sacred. Because this isn't about performing. It's about communing. It's about remembering you were never alone, and that the veil was never as thick as it seemed. There's one message that comes through more than any other. One truth that every spirit guide, no matter their origin or method of communication, tries to express. You are never alone. Not for one breath, not for one heartbreak, not even in the moments where the silence feels unbearable. You've been accompanied, guided since the day you were born, and even before that. Spirit guides don't always look how you expect. They aren't floating figures in white robes. They rarely introduce themselves with grand gestures or thunderous proclamations. In fact, most remain quiet until you're ready to hear them, and when they do speak, it's rarely in words. It's in nudges, in dreams, in strange coincidences, in the voice of a stranger saying exactly what you needed to hear. And here's the part many don't realize. Your guides have always respected your free will. They won't interfere unless you ask. They won't override your choices. Because this is your path, your evolution, your lessons. But when you do ask, they listen. They guide through synchronicity, through signs so personal, so precise they can't be ignored. And the more you learn to recognize those signs, the more they arrive. Not because the guides are suddenly more present, but because you're more aware. Throughout years of channeling and deep spiritual communication, one truth kept emerging again and again. They don't want to control you. They want to remind you. Remind you that you are loved. Remind you that you have choice. Remind you that even when your world seems to be crumbling, there's a higher path unfolding that your mind can't yet comprehend, but your soul already agreed to. They often speak in layers, messages that seem simple at first but hold deeper meaning the more you reflect. They've warned people of health conditions before doctors ever saw them, gently urged someone to leave a toxic relationship before it turned dangerous, nudged someone toward a career they thought was impossible, only to find it was the exact thing they were born to do. As they've saved lives, they've changed lives, and yet they never demand recognition. Some guides remain anonymous, not because they're hiding, but because the focus isn't supposed to be on them. It's supposed to be on you, on your development, your voice, your inner knowing. And that's the secret to understanding spirit guidance. It never replaces your intuition, it amplifies it. It helps you trust that gut feeling you've pushed aside for years, that whisper you always second-guessed, that hunch that turned out to be right. Your intuition is the most direct channel your guides can use, because it's your own voice. When you're finally listening, so many messages come through just before sleep, in dreams, in moments of surrender. That's because your conscious mind isn't fighting for control. You're softer, receptive, and the guides can speak more freely. Sometimes the messages are warm. You're doing better than you think. Stop comparing yourself to who you thought you'd be. Rest. It's part of the path. Other times they're blunt. This relationship is draining your life force. You're betraying your own truth. You know what to do. You're just afraid to do it. But even the hard truths are delivered with compassion. Your guides don't operate from ego. They're not disappointed in you. They don't get tired of repeating themselves. They simply wait, patiently, for the moment you're ready to choose differently, and when you do, they cheer in ways you can't yet hear. One person once described it like this: "It's like there's an invisible team clapping for me every time I choose self-respect." That's not just metaphor, that's real. Because your guides don't just observe your journey, they're invested in it. They've seen you in lifetimes past. They've watched you evolve. They know how far you've come, and they're constantly whispering, "Don't give up now." Some people expect their guides to have names, origins, elaborate backstories, and while some do reveal these details, many do not. Not because they don't exist, but because what matters more than who they are is what they're helping you become. But how do you know when it's truly guidance, and not just your imagination? Look for the echo. True spiritual messages come with resonance. They repeat across different sources. You'll read something in a book that mirrors the exact words you journaled the day before. A stranger will speak a sentence you thought only existed in your mind. A sign on the street will answer a question you never said out loud. That's guidance. That's alignment. And while every guide has their own way of communicating, some through imagery, others through feeling or sudden insight, they all share a common goal: to help you return to your highest self, to realign you with the path your soul chose, to help you remember your strength when the world has tried to make you forget. And here's something they often want you to know, but you may not have heard clearly until now. Your pain is not a punishment. It's a signal, a redirection, a call to return home to yourself. They've been with you in your darkest hours, not because they caused your suffering, but because they know what that suffering will birth in you: compassion, depth, courage, power. They never ask you to bypass your grief or stay positive. That's not spiritual growth. That's avoidance. Real growth happens when you're honest, when you cry, when you rage, when you fall apart and still choose to rise. And when you do, they rise with you. There are moments, usually small and quiet, when the guidance becomes crystal clear. You'll say something and realize it didn't come from your normal thinking. You'll feel held in a way that has no physical source. You'll feel a love so deep it brings tears to your eyes for no reason at all. That's them. That's your team. You've had help every step of the way, and though they don't always intervene the way you'd like, they never leave. If a guide ever goes quiet, it's not abandonment, it's space. Sometimes they step back so you can listen to yourself, because your power doesn't come from obeying them, it comes from integrating their wisdom with your own voice. You are not here to be led blindly. You are here to become sovereign, and they are here to support you in that sacred becoming. So the next time you feel a whisper of insight, the next time you sense something beyond the veil nudging you, warming you, protecting you, don't ignore it. Say thank you, because someone's been with you this whole time, and they're still right here. Communicating with the spirit world is a gift, but it's not a game. It's a sacred connection, a bridge between realms, and with that comes responsibility. Just because you can feel someone's energy doesn't mean you should read it. Just because a spirit wants to speak doesn't mean you need to listen. This is where ethics enter the path. Because true mediumship isn't about proving something to others. It's not about spectacle, it's not about ego, it's about service, alignment, and above all, love. One of the most important principles you can carry into this work is this: consent matters. It's tempting, especially when you first open up spiritually, to want to share everything you feel. You might be around someone and suddenly sense a message coming through for them. But if they haven't asked, if they haven't opened that door, don't step through it. Respect their sovereignty. You wouldn't walk into someone's home uninvited. The same goes for their energy field. Ethical mediumship starts with the understanding that just because you can doesn't mean you should. The most powerful messages are never delivered through force. They arrive through invitation, and always, always, from a space of love. Fear-based spiritual work is dangerous. It distorts, it manipulates, it preys on vulnerability. You've seen it before. The psychic who warns someone of a curse and demands money to remove it, or the so-called healer who insists that only they can access the truth. These are not spiritual leaders, they are manipulators wearing spiritual masks. Real guidance never disempowers you. It uplifts you, it reconnects you to your own voice, your own knowing, your own divine wisdom. That's why grounding is so important. When your energy is anchored, clear, and present, you can tell the difference between truth and distortion. You can feel it. True impressions arrive with calm. They may be intense, but they're never frantic. They never demand urgency or obedience. If something makes you feel anxious, fearful, or confused, it's not from the light. Real spiritual impressions are gentle, consistent. They don't overwhelm, they invite. So how do you stay grounded when working with spirit? It starts with your body. Before any reading, meditation, or energetic practice, take a moment to center. Stand barefoot. Feel your feet on the floor. Breathe deeply into your belly. Imagine golden roots extending from the base of your spine down into the earth, anchoring you to her calm, steady heartbeat. You are a channel, and channels need support. Set your boundaries. Speak them out loud. I only allow communication from beings of the highest light. I close all channels that are not aligned with divine love. This isn't superstition, it's clarity. Spirit respects clarity. And when you speak your boundaries, you create a container that keeps your field protected and your perception clean. You can also work with tools, crystals like black tourmaline or obsidian to absorb dense energy, protective visualizations like shields of white or violet light, or sacred rituals like smudging with sage, ringing bells, or using sacred oils. These aren't just gestures, they train your energy to respond to intention. But the strongest protection of all? Your vibration. The more love-based your energy is, the less susceptible you are to deception. Lower entities, confused or mischievous spirits, can't maintain their presence around high-frequency light. They may try to distract you, mimic guides, or provoke fear, but if you stay rooted in love, discernment, and your heart's intelligence, they fall away. And here's something essential to remember. Not every spirit needs to be engaged. Just like in life, not every voice deserves your time. Some are lost, some are chaotic, some are simply not your responsibility. You can say no, you can close the channel, you can choose silence over noise. There was a guiding rule once spoken by a deeply respected medium. If it doesn't feel like love, it doesn't belong. And that's the compass. Not your ego, not your pride, not your need to impress, just love. Even in readings for others, that same ethical compass applies. Don't rush to reveal everything you see or hear. Some information is meant to be delivered gently, slowly, or not at all. Tune into the person across from you. Ask, is this message truly helpful, or is it just shocking? Because power without compassion is harm. But power with compassion becomes healing. And healing is what mediumship is meant to bring. It's meant to reconnect, to soothe grief, to validate inner knowing, to remind people that their loved ones are still close, that they haven't disappeared, just transformed. The best mediums aren't the ones who dazzle, they're the ones who listen deeply, to spirits, to energy, to emotion, and to the sacred responsibility they hold. They don't read people on the street. They don't use their gifts to dominate conversations. They don't chase spirits like trophies. They create space. They ask for permission. They trust their intuition. And they're not afraid to say, I don't know, when something doesn't come through. Because real spiritual work isn't about always being right. It's about always being aligned. So, if you're feeling called to this path, to open, to receive, to serve, start with your integrity. Ask yourself, am I grounded? Am I connected to love? Am I honoring boundaries, both mine and others? Am I listening more than I'm speaking? And most of all, am I remembering that every soul, every message, every presence is sacred? Because when you hold that level of respect, the veil responds, it parts, and you become a bridge not just between worlds, but between fear and truth, between silence and remembrance, between pain and light. That's the real work, and it begins not with permission from the spirits, but with permission from your own heart. One day you will take your final breath, and when that moment comes, what will matter most is not how much you accomplished or how much you accumulated, but how deeply you lived, how often you loved, how present you were with your soul. Death isn't the end, it's a return, and the more you remember that truth now, while you're still alive, the easier and more beautiful your transition will be. Sylvia always said the greatest way to prepare for death is to live in alignment with your spirit, every single day, not in perfection, not in some unreachable saint-like state, but in awareness, in intention, in truth, because death isn't the enemy, fear is, and fear only thrives when we've ignored the whispers of our soul for too long. So how do you begin to prepare, not out of panic but out of reverence? You start by acknowledging your own immortality. You remind yourself that this life is a chapter, that you've been here before and you'll be here again, that your soul isn't afraid of death. It understands it. It's your mind that resists, your ego, your identity. Because they don't know what exists beyond the veil. But your soul remembers. You can feel it even now, that calmness when you hear the truth. That peace that washes over you when someone speaks of the light. That still, deep place inside you that says, I know, I've always known. That's where you begin. From there you strengthen your connection through simple, powerful practices. Prayer, not begging, not bargaining, but communion. Quiet, honest dialogue with your guides, your higher self, the divine. Speak as if you're already heard, because you are. You don't need perfect words. You just need presence. Service. One of the highest spiritual frequencies is kindness. Every time you serve from a place of love, you're polishing your soul, you're lifting your vibration, you're aligning yourself with the energy of the other side. Because over there, love is the currency, compassion is the language. Clearing. Don't wait until you're dying to release the heaviness. Start now. Let go of resentments. Forgive what's been weighing you down. Speak what's unspoken. Cry when you need to. Laugh when you can. Every emotional clearing is a gift to your spirit. It makes the eventual crossing softer, lighter. Because when your time comes, it won't be chaos. It won't be pain. It will be transition. Spiritually, the dying process often begins days or even weeks before the final breath. The soul starts to loosen its tether. The silver cord, as some call it, begins to stretch. The person may become more tired, more withdrawn. They might speak to those who've already passed, see things others can't. That's not confusion, that's preparation. The veil thins, and spirit steps forward to welcome them. If you're near someone who is crossing, the most powerful thing you can do is hold space. Don't try to pull them back with fear or grief. Speak to their soul, even if they're unconscious. Tell them it's okay to go, that they're safe, that they're loved, that they're being received. Play soft music, light a candle, speak gently, keep the energy calm and sacred. You are a witness to a miracle, a soul returning home. Some people choose to die consciously. They feel it coming, and instead of resisting, they embrace it. They may ask to be alone, or surrounded by only a few loved ones. They may go into meditation or fall into a deep peace. That's not giving up. That's graduation, and it's more common than you think. Many souls who lived in awareness, who practiced stillness, who faced their shadows and cleared their pain. When death comes, they don't run. They welcome it. They feel their guides. They see the light. And they leave with grace. You can prepare for that moment long before it comes. Start by asking yourself, what am I holding on to that I wouldn't want to carry with me? Guilt? Anger? Shame? Let it go. Not for them. For you. Every release you make now is a gift to your future crossing. Because in those final moments, what matters most is lightness and love. Not just the love you received, but the love you gave. And when your soul begins to rise, when the light opens, when the familiar faces appear, you won't feel fear. You'll feel homecoming, and you'll understand something you could never fully grasp while alive. You were always becoming. The way you've heard the stories, you felt the presence, you've walked step by step through the veil and back again, and now maybe you see what Sylvia saw, not with your eyes, but with something deeper, a quiet knowing, a sacred familiarity, a memory that lives inside your spirit. You're not just a body, you are not just this lifetime. You are an eternal soul passing through. This isn't the end. It was never meant to be. The afterlife is not a punishment, a reward, or a mystery meant to be feared. It's your home, the place you came from, the place you'll return to, and the place that, in truth, has never left you. It's been with you all along, in your dreams, in your quiet moments, in the way your heart breaks open in beauty, in the sudden warmth when you think of someone you've lost. That's not imagination. That's spirit, reminding you we are still here. Sylvia taught us something most people never dared to say out loud. Death is not the end of love. And the greatest mystery about the afterlife? It's not what's waiting for you, it's that you've already touched it. Every time you chose compassion over judgment, every time you forgave even when it hurt, every time you trusted your intuition, followed your heart, listened to that unexplainable voice inside, you were aligning with eternity, because what awaits you is not fire, it's not judgment, it's remembrance. You'll remember that you are guided. You'll remember that you are never alone. You'll remember that every loss was temporary, every goodbye was only a pause. And when you arrive, you'll be greeted by the ones who left before you, by the guides who walked beside you, by the part of yourself you thought you'd lost but who was never gone. And until that moment comes, live as if you already know the truth. Live as if you are eternal. Live as if every person you meet is a soul in transit, just like you. Because when you do, everything shifts. Fear becomes curiosity. Grief becomes a doorway. And life, this wild, fragile, beautiful life, becomes sacred again. So if you're listening to this, take this final message deep into your heart. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. You are guided, loved, and forever connected. Always have been, always will be. And when the time comes for you to return, the light will open, and you'll remember the way home.